Welcome to Thinking Like a Lawyer, with your hosts Ellie Mistal and Joe Patrice, talking about legal news and pop culture, all while thinking like a lawyer, here on Legal Talk Network.
Hello, welcome to another edition of Thinking Like a Lawyer. I'm Joe Patrice from Above the Law. I'm joined by fellow editor Kathryn Rubino. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, Joe. How about yourself?
Excellent. I'm trying to be as restrained and awkwardly NPR-y as possible.
I mean, it's weird. It is very strange.
It is. I mean,
that's
why I don't.
It's also just not like your personality, right?
No, it's true. I mean, I'm a little slower today. I attempted to keep up with the devastating vice presidential drinking game that I created, which, again, I attempted to soften after the debacle that was the first one, and it only turned out worse. I actually think it may have been worse.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, I'm pretty sure every single thing on your list was hit, I think.
Oh, God, yes.
It was pretty much
just
everything.
Kept happening.
It was pretty much everything.
I was so sure that some of those were not going to happen. I mean, Tupac didn't show up. That was one
I guess
of them.
there's that.
But, yeah.
I guess there's that. But then again, we don't know. They didn't pan to the audience very much. So
It's true.
That's just what they want you to believe.
Anywho.
Life after death.
Yeah. So we're here talking about the week's legal news again. Yes, the biggest news, of course. Last time we were here, we were discussing the Rose Garden unveiling of Amy Coney Barrett. This week, we're talking a lot about her new nickname, I suppose, Amy COVID Barrett, because she, as it turns out, was the triggering event, the epicenter of a outbreak of cases within the White House that now has more cases total than the country of New Zealand, I believe.
Yes, I believe that's accurate.
Yeah. So we were going to go through a few things. So first, let's talk about
there's, I think, currently 34 cases.
Yeah.
At the last count that I was tracking anyway, it very much could have changed, I guess, today. And by the time this is released, certainly almost likely to have changed. But it is quite astonishing, not just that leaders got it and apparently spread it, which, given the attitude towards masks generally and any sort of safety precautions amongst the Republicans, is not entirely surprising. But there was a callousness that I personally was not prepared for about the disease that is frankly shocking. The president did a ride in a hermetically sealed limousine with a member of the Secret Service driving. I assume that person is at the very least quarantined at the moment. And really the staff members who are, nonpartisan, non-political appointees, but just people who work in the orbit of powerful people has been quite astonishing.
Yeah, from a legal perspective, it seemed a little gratuitous. There was not really a reason to have this event. We already knew who it was going to be, frankly, and this could have just been passed along as an FYI. They didn't need to have everyone together.
Yeah, or they could have just had it as a smaller event, right? They didn't have. Yeah. That picture.
Now that's not fair. There was a smaller event. There was a larger event. That event that we see pictures of outdoors in the Rose Garden. Mm-hmm. Then there was following a smaller reception indoors where they all were without masks.
I can only roll my eyes so hard.
True. But yeah, it seemed problematic.
Mm-hmm.
We've now got a.
Yeah, and listen, you wrote this article about Amy COVID Barrett, which is a fantastic nickname. It's certainly better than the one that the GOP was trying to foist upon her.
Well, that's what I was trying to set up as the transition, but you kept jumping in there and saying more stuff.
Well,
this
is literally a podcast. The point is to talk.
I agree.
So I can't just wait for you. Sometimes I got to make my own stuff happen, man.
That's true. Okay, so you had written a piece about there was an effort to assign a nickname.
Yeah, the Republican Senatorial Committee made shirts and were selling them Notorious ACB, which is not okay for a couple of reasons. First of all, obviously, you can't just steal someone else's nickname and someone who's recently passed and who is beloved. You can't just be like, oh, here's another woman.
Yeah.
She also has her maiden name is, she also goes by her maiden name and her married name. So it's basically the same. That is absolutely not okay. Also, the shirts themselves were particularly ugly, and also weird punctuation. They had periods after the A and the C, but not the B. I don't know why. That seems bizarre.
I'm glad that your hang-up, that one of your biggest hang-ups was grammatical, or I guess not grammatical, punctuation.
It just, come on, man. You can't even do that right. Come on. You can't even get it right. And the whole point is that nicknames, nicknames don't come from the top down, right? Nicknames come from the bottom up, right? The whole reason why Ruth Bader Ginsburg got the nickname Notorious RBG was something that happened. A law student at NYU Law School came up with a Tumblr account naming her that after her descent in Shelby County.
Yeah.
And again, it was something she became, noted for. It was not just... And, like we said in our podcast where we talked about Ruth Bader Ginsburg's passing, is that she was noted not just for her opinions, but also her dissents, that, those were powerful and a source of strength for people as well. And that was really what the Notorious RBG, plus, her and Biggie both grew up in Brooklyn. There were other parallels between her and Biggie. So, it made much more sense than this kind of top-down bullshit.
Yeah. No, I think that's true. So... Thankfully, she wanted a nickname, and she has, circumstances have provided, and she's now locked in. I first saw the Amy Coney Barrett moniker from the always delightful edgy meme,
law memes for
edgy T14s on Facebook. And that's where I saw it first. I started making it. I noticed it crop up in a few other people's tweets last night as discussion was going. So I think we're slowly herding that nickname into common parlance. I was all ready to go with Justice Karen, but we're I guess we've moved on, and I for one welcome it. So that's been the big court story of the day, I suppose. I guess we should also take a quick second to talk about law firms. I think it's fair to say that above the law, we have three kind of overarching kinds of stories. We have stories about our courts, stories about big law firms, and stories that touch on law school. And I think we can now have a more or less seamless transition into big law and the way in which the big law firms are now reacting as the economy gets a little bit better. Because, when you're thinking about big law firms and the economy, you wonder, how have law firms weathered previous economic downturns and come out stronger on the other side? LexisNexis Interaction has released an in-depth global research report confronting the 2020 downturn, lessons learned during previous economic crises. Download your free copy at interaction.com/likealawyer to see tips, strategies, plans, and statistics from leaders who have been through this before and how they've achieved success again. So, on that note, we had the bonus run where a bunch of people get things. And then we had...
There were special fall bonuses that were given out.
Right, we did, which we covered last week.
Reminding people.
Fair enough. I hear you. So we had those. Then we started to see some of the follow the leader happening where Cravath, who traditionally is a leader, came out and said they weren't going to give bonuses. And we mused that this could be a make or break point where we start seeing people decide one way or the other. And it appears as though since Cravath has made their claim that they aren't going to give out bonuses, the PAC has decided to follow them.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. Since Cravath made their announcement, no one else has announced fall bonuses. So for the most part, and the more time that ticks by, the closer we get to the end of the year bonuses, the less likely we are to see anything in the fall. And, I think it's been kind of interesting to see what the industry is doing. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal, Sarah Randazzo wrote it, about the overall health of the big law industry. And guess what? Everything's up. Revenue's up, profits are up, income's up, because not only, every year big law firms raise their rates. They did it again in 2020. They have these higher rates. So compared, over from this time last year, there's more income. There's also fewer expenses because, most firms spent millions of dollars every year on travel expenses, which they did not have again this year. So by and large, law firms are doing well. And they're not necessarily giving that money to the associates or even staff who, are the ones who are earning it for them.
Right. Well, and this brings to a sore point for you,
yeah.
I know. So they are making all this money. They aren't handing it out. And one of the reasons that has trickled to us through tipsters is that the leadership of some of these firms feel that it would look bad. It would be bad optics if they were to give out big bonuses now.
I mean, Brad Karp said exactly that when when Paul Weiss said that they were not going to give fall bonuses. He said it would not be appropriate at this time to give COVID bonuses. And I mean, this just seems like a lot of bullshit to me. Whether or not it's appropriate, these firms have the money. It's not like they're not collecting. It's not like they're donating the money to people who are particularly hard hit by COVID. No, they're still getting the money. They still have more money than they did last year at this time. It's not like the money is somehow gone or they're not collecting it because of COVID. Most of these firms have the money. Most of these firms are doing better than they did even last year.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, the question, I understand Brad's feeling,
sure.
And it seems gauche to be collecting money when the economy is going down. But the problem is, the question is not bonuses or not charging an arm and a leg and getting rich. The question is giving money to the associates and staff versus keeping the money as partners.
Right.
And when you say
right.
it that way, the gauche thing kind of looks like it might be more the latter.
Sure, I think that's very, very true. And there's definitely the possibility, and I think a lot of firms have held out this to their rather angry associate base, that they'll make them sort of whole compared to the market by the end of the year and their end of the year bonuses, so that there'll be sort of added money to that pot. To which I say, good. That's kind of if you have the capability of giving these bonuses as a firm, I think that's obviously the bare minimum that you should be doing, is giving them out at the end of the year. But here's the other thing. As these firms are quick to note, times are tough for lots of people. They have no idea what their employees are going through, nor should they, right? There's people have personal lives, whatever, right? They don't know, what their financial situation is. Yes, associates make plenty of money. No one's saying they don't, but you don't know whether or not someone is helping to support a family member who's out of work or some other kind of financial hardship that's gone on right now. And they could maybe use the money right now, as opposed to in 3 to 5 months now. Because some firms, even though they're ends of the year, they don't give them, you actually don't get them until February or March even at some firms, depending, kind of on the individual firms. But that's a big difference when you're talking about, that's almost half of a year, more than a quarter, and so you're saying, oh, it's better in the firm's accounts than it is in the associates. And I think that is a very paternalistic way of viewing their employees.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's not great when you phrase it the way, and I totally understand the feeling, like the impulse. Like, I remember during the last major once-in-a-lifetime economic crisis a few years ago, I remember during that there were banks who gave out bonuses, and it did look bad to have people talking about $100,000 bonuses when everything's going down the tubes. But the issue is, you can't think of it as in that way. You've got to have the mindset being, the money's there. Is it better in my pocket or in somebody else's? And
also all these firms that have said, oh, we're not going to give out fall special bonuses, have all 201 said that we will give out end of the year bonuses.
Right.
And most have confirmed that those will be at least as large as last year's bonus pool.
Right. At that point.
So you're still going to get the story's still out there. Such and such firm gives bonuses, big numbers at the end of the year. Who cares if it's at the end of the year or if it's in the fall?
Yeah, and as far as a framing issue, though, like, frame it the same way we frame the stimulus checks that everybody got.
Yeah.
The firm is giving out a fairly substantial payment to associates and staff to help them get by. I mean, that's a positive story. That's not some sort of a gauche statement. Like,
and I certainly think that law school students who are thinking about where they want to work when they graduate are looking at about a dozen or so firms that have come out with the fall bonuses, and I think that they see that is a positive story.
Yeah.
For the best and the brightest, you want to be able to attract and maintain the best and the brightest constantly in terms of your lateral market, in terms of your law school recruitment. Showing that you want to give extra money during the pandemic is a good thing. It shows that you can say all these nice words about wellness and about care, but giving people the means to provide their own care is also very important.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting annual bonus season because we're going to have, it seems as though we're all but guaranteed to have, at least for a while, some sort of two-tiered bonus system, which we generally don't have in Biglaw. Generally, everybody falls into one line.
I think it was a couple years ago, there was like about a $10,000 special bonus that some firms were giving on top of the
so there's always a few outliers who do, high earners get a little bit extra and different tracks.
Sure, and that's all still true.
But we're looking at, theoretically, we're looking at a situation where if some of these firms are true to their word, they're going to have bonuses that are $40,000 more than the Davis Polk's bonuses.
Right, because
they're trying to, make that up. And the question is, will that be how it plays? Well, and I'm not sure. We'll see.
Well, here's what I think. And this gets a little bit in the weeds, but I think that even the sort of... we don't know what anybody will do for sure, but let's just assume it's Cravath, right? Because they probably will make their associates whole. Okay, so I think when the Cravath bonuses come out, I think that there will be in that kind of schedule that they kind of circulate. That's like, the little column every class year. I think that there will be a second column that will be special bonuses in addition to your typical year-end bonuses, and so there will be two numbers. I think for the firms that need to make folks whole, because they don't want next year in 2021 to say, oh, our end of the year bonuses are down over last year.
Right.
So unless they're planning on adding, $7,500 to $40,000 to their total every year-end bonuses, which I don't think is true, they will make sure to bifurcate them so that they have a clear number that's their year-end number that they're going to build off of or keep the same for next year and going forward, as well as these sort of special bonuses, which will not be included in the sort of the going forward number.
Yeah, it will be weird to see how this all plays out.
That's how I think it. That's
I think that's a fair point. Although once again, that just really underscores why it's smarter to give out the bonus now so that it's not counted as one of the, but whatever. It is a thing, and I understand there's a lot of associates out there who are, worried about it and stuff.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of folks are rightly miffed. Of course, there are sometimes always associates who aren't as busy during this kind of craziness that's going on in the world, whether it's because of their practice group or because they have personal issues that are preventing them from billing at quite the rate that they would otherwise do or that they would like to bill at. There are also practice groups that are incredibly busy. Right?
Yeah.
That are billing. And because of the sort of nature of working from home, there are people who the only time that they're not billing is when they're sleeping. Mm-hmm. Because what's the difference between, there's no home to get to, right? You're already there.
Commuting.
There's no commute, right? So there are folks that are billing every moment that they're possibly can because they're so busy, because the work is there, because they're worried about the overall health of the firm as it relates to their job stability. So there's this added pressure. You should be so grateful that you have a job right now. So they're billing like crazy. There's no kind of separation, no personal time for themselves. Vacations overall are down. People aren't taking vacations because where are we going? What are we doing? So people aren't, kind of taking care of themselves. And so to say thank you with money, that's the only way Biglaw really has to say thank you. I think it's completely appropriate.
Yeah. And unfortunately, several associates out there are missing out on it. If you work with contracts and don't use contract tools, you're missing a lot. See?
I see what you did there.
Save time, make more money, and do a better job for your clients with Contract Tools by Paper Software. Contract Tools is the most powerful Word add-in for working with contracts. Thousands of lawyers all over the world rely on Contract Tools every day for every kind of deal. Visit papersoftware.com to watch a demo and get a free trial. As a special offer to podcast listeners, use coupon code LTN2020 to get 1 month free. That's papersoftware.com and LTN 2020. So there were some bar exams this week.
Oh, you're so sad about this bar exam, and you've already passed it.
I'm not, actually. I'm not. Yes, I have taken and passed a bar exam, and yet I felt more stress about this one than I think my own. Look, we've talked for months now on these shows about the problems we've been dealing with these bar exams, but the way this week played out was just truly, it was not the biggest nightmare scenario, but it was real close.
I mean, it's not good.
Nothing working would have been the true nightmare scenario. The problem is some things worked, which made it more of a gray zone, but unfortunately
I mean, I spoke to someone who works in the bar exam world and was just horrified at some of the stories that they were hearing.
Yeah.
Constantly being like, have you seen this? Have you heard what's going on? And it's every terrible story that you've heard about the bar exam. Maybe there's a lot of you listening who didn't take this year's bar exam, but you've heard they're all true.
Yeah. This was the online exam, which really is, it was a exercise of pure incompetence and cruelty and pettiness. There was no plan. This was the exams that were concocted basically to replace in-person exams during a pandemic, which frankly we applauded. If you're going to have an exam,
right,
which you probably shouldn't, but if you have to have a bar exam, at least you don't try to kill people. I like
sure, that seems like a
totally
not a hard bar to clear.
Unfortunately, what happened was they just kind of moved forward with this without working out whether or not this will work to do the bar exam online. And as it turns out, there's more hurdles than one might have expected.
The thing that gets me, and I know you've written about this, but as I was kind of hearing the stories myself, was the refrain from the bar examiners if somebody had some sort of a technical problem, maybe they couldn't log in, maybe the software wouldn't recognize their face, which is a very racist thing that we knew was going to happen and absolutely happened. But the refrain was, try again in February.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Absolutely.
That is not an okay answer.
Entirely unacceptable.
Entirely unacceptable. And here's the other thing, which I don't really think you had a chance to kind of get into, but this really messes up people's lives and careers, right? Some firms are saying you can't start until you've passed the exam, first of all, or taken the exam, but you haven't even taken it because you couldn't log in through no fault of your own.
Yeah.
What's going to happen to those folks who, are maybe took out loans in order to survive until the extended date, because they were supposed to have started in October. They're supposed to start working in October, but now they can't work in October. They're taking the bar exam in October. Then they're supposed to log in through no fault of their own. Doesn't work. They're told, oh, try again in February. What the hell are they supposed to do?
Right.
Some firms aren't going to let them come back. Some will. And I make this plea to as many firms as possible. Please let the folks who are screwed by the technical incompetence of the bar exam start their jobs as soon as possible. But even if they work at a great firm who says, of course, that's not your fault. We feel the worst for you. Please come back, do whatever you need to do. That still means they need to take time in February to take the exam, right? You can't just depend on the studying that you did in September and October. You have to restudy in February. That's more time of their life that they have to take off from starting their career. They're 9 months out from where they otherwise would have been if it wasn't for the pandemic. Yeah. And this particular extension is because of pure incompetence and hubris. That's the thing. They assume, well, it's going to be fine. Well, 98% of people were able to start the exam, which, by the way, does not mean they did not have technical problems.
It's not the same number as finished, correct?
And does not mean that they didn't have their own set of technical problems, right? Yeah. And that's still hundreds of people who are screwed.
Yes. So this started as an attempt for an online exam. The process eventually reached, as it got rolling, the NCBE initially refused to acknowledge these in their effort to make sure that they maintain a monopoly on in-person exams. They ultimately agreed to give them questions. Their kind of cast-off questions were given to
that's a whole separate problem.
Yeah,
where people are saying that the questions... I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You were going to say it.
Oh, yeah. No. So they did this. Then we had episodes with Indiana, Nevada, and Florida not being able to use the platform. Those technical problems were based on a system that was trying to do live proctoring, basically like a Zoom window where everybody could see. That didn't work. It crashed. And so that provider is out. Everybody instead is using ExamSoft. ExamSoft uses facial recognition technology to ensure and just flag people who do things that are suspicious for a later review. What causes you to be flagged is stuff like, being black, as it turns out, which is something that was a known problem, an explicitly called out problem. Tales of it happening on exam day were met with technical support saying, we have no idea why that would happen. We've never heard of such a thing. It's explicitly called out multiple times. Yeah. We had this software works where you can't get up or look away from the screen. We had a woman who came forward explaining that she had to quit and withdraw the exam and try again in February because she had her period in the middle of the exam and couldn't stay there, obviously. We heard a horrifying story of a guy who actually, couldn't get up, so urinated in the middle of the exam and just had to kind of sit in it till he finished, which is what we normally would consider torture, but here we just call it the bar exam. These are not skills that you need to have to be a lawyer.
Nope.
These are not tests of minimum competency. And on the subject of testing, and this is where you were about to go off, these cast-off questions from the NCBE, at least according to the chatter on the subreddit, including from people who've already taken bar exams in the past and are admitted lawyers who are, moving to new jurisdictions and stuff like that. Everybody is kind of uniformly saying that the questions that the NCBE decided to give to this test that it didn't want to have happen, surprise, surprise, if somebody doesn't want it to happen, they give them the bad questions, it appears.
So there's a higher percentage of those folks that then have to turn around and take it again in February.
Right. So lots of out of left field questions, apparently. And it's just been a terrible event, and there's been nothing but a callous response of people saying, oh, well, I get it mostly worked. Technical support was largely unavailable to people. People were waiting
for hours.
Most calls were in under an hour from what I've managed to cobble together. But before you think that's good news, a lot of them were like 45 minutes.
And that time came out of their testing time.
Most jurisdictions seem to be taking that directly out of the testing time, not giving people the opportunity to make that back up. One person actually prepared to withdraw from the exam because he'd spent a couple of hours trying to get it to work and knew that he wouldn't be able to finish. That thankfully had a happy ending. The head of the New York testing said, "This is ridiculous. We'll just give you time." So that was good. But
there's plenty of people, I'm sure, who had similar problems who didn't happen to go public with it.
And it took appealing to the top level to get any kind of dispensation there. This is,
and again, it's that squeaky wheel.
Yeah.
This is why we have so many Karens in the world, because you don't get it. You don't get to finish the test unless you're the one out there making complaints.
Yeah. It was just a disaster. This is the sort of thing that even though like a lot of us were trying and advocating that this not happen, it has now happened. That said, we shouldn't lose our energy for it. We should continue to agitate to...
Who knows what will happen in February?
Yeah. This seems to be something that could come up again. The people that it's happened to probably shouldn't be subjected to what they, the results of what they just went through. There are better ways to regulate the profession. The profession does need to be regulated. There does need to be gateways to say that some people aren't qualified to pass. Those gateways need to be something that's actually meaningful and not a stupid test designed from the jump to fail 25% of the people so that they can justify their own existence. That is not a test of minimum competency. The driver's exam is not, do some stuff and if you happen, and we'll draw lots and see if you fail. Like, that's not how we test minimum competency in real things. Right. It's not how we should do it for the law.
Putting the gatekeeping function before people take out loans, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of loans, is probably better.
Right, or have that be the gatekeeping function. I am comfortable with the idea that we should be stricter on accrediting law schools. Yeah. And you'll have paid all that money, but you know that if you pay that money and you graduate, you're
going to be able to practice.
Pending, I think, ethical
Sure.
gatekeeping has to happen.
Yeah, and by the way, I think it was Indiana you had reported on did the email or is doing the email.
Ultimately what they did is they just emailed a bunch of essay questions out and said, fill these out. Open book, open whatever, just make these answers.
Just get it done. Which is much more akin to what actually practicing and being a lawyer. And who would have thought that like the Revenge of 1994 would have, with the email questions would actually be the right answer.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny when it happened, but you know what? Turned out they were right.
Yeah. No. Exams like that. Exams that say, here's a legal problem. You have 4 hours to write us a memo. Like that is the sort of thing that actually tests what lawyers do. This is none of that. It is ridiculous that we have it, that this is the way in which we gatekeep. And after all that happened this week, I just hope that some people in positions of authority out there are looking at it and saying,
maybe
we should do something else.
Yeah, they have to. I feel like they really, really have to. This is not okay.
All right. Well, cool. So, lively discussion. We will be back again next week as per usual. Actually, we won't. I will.
Right.
You're bailing on it. Not permanently, but you'll be gone. And
I have a doctor's appointment. It's okay.
Okay, fair enough. That's a HIPAA violation. No, it's not. But if anybody's following that, the series of bad legal takes people have about what HIPAA actually says on Twitter are enjoyable. But we'll have a show at least next week. So with that said, thank you all for listening. You should be subscribed to the show, giving it reviews, write something, put in some stars. That is all very helpful. You should be reading Above the Law. You should be following us on the Twitters. I'm at Joseph Patrice. She's at Kathryn1. That's the numeral 1. You should be listening to The Jabot, which Kathryn hosts, and the ATL COVID cast, which we have, which is about unexpected ways in which the law is being changed by COVID, sort of. And with all that said, I'd like to say one more thank you to Contract Tools by Paper Software for sponsoring the show, and we will
talk to you next week.
Yep.
If you'd like more information about what you've heard today, please visit LegalTalkNetwork.com. You can also find us at AboveTheLaw.com, ATLRedline.com, iTunes, RSS, Twitter, and Facebook. The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own and do not represent the views of, nor are they endorsed by, Legal Talk Network, its officers, directors, employees, agents, representatives, shareholders, and subsidiaries. None of the content should be considered legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer.